I knew you were going to bring more than one, and I almost did. Totally almost did.
It's all good. It's all good. I keep giving you rules, and then you follow them.
Actually, it's just easier because I'm one of those guys. Like once I decide, okay, yeah, we're here. This is what we're doing.
Everything.
By the way,
as we get started.
I fucking love this comic. I know it's a one-off.
Yeah.
I fucking loved it.
Good. I did too. It took me. I'm gonna save it.
Yeah, I know. I was
gonna save it. Yeah. Let's not start talking. The whole fucking point. wherever you can put it. Yeah. Okay, that works. Oh, then no, that's how we should start.
I know. Oh, right. Go.
Oh, we're recording.
Go.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to another Wine and Comics pairing show. I'm Dave.
I'm Dallas.
And we are here to talk about a special one-shot comic that is coming out on March 22nd to comic shops everywhere. Right. We are recording this on March 10th. By the time this is actually being posted online, it'll probably be March 17th. It'll probably be very close to when it's coming out. So look for it probably the next Wednesday after you watch this show. If you've already missed March 22nd and you're watching this afterwards, just get online, find out where it is, go buy a copy because
it's kind of fantastic, guys.
we tried not to talk about it before actually rolling the camera here, but we did mention briefly that we both really love this. Yeah. So this is a really special one. I'm not 100% certain on the pronunciation of the title of this, but I'm going to give it a shot. I believe it's like ether, so it's Etheres.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And this is by Anas Abdulhak and Dennis Menheere. Or Menheere, that I'm not sure about either. But this is a really special comic because both guys have done smaller comics or self-published comics in the past, but this is both Anas's and Dennis's, as far as I could tell from looking up their bibliographies, that this is their first full comic. Dennis has done some short stories that have been in anthologies, but I believe this is the first full comic that he is getting out there into the world, maybe even just as a comic. He's an illustrator as well, but I believe this is his first comic that isn't a short story that is getting published. And for Anas, this is definitely his first that's being released by a third-party publisher, and is not, him releasing it out into the world under a brand or a banner or something of that nature. And this is Anas's, as far as I know, his second one-shot comic. He did one, and we will throw some pictures of these up on screen here in a minute. But he did do one. His very first was called Eleutheromania, which is based on the Greek word eleutheros, which means freedom. And one thing that's really interesting, I made sure to go grab a copy of Eleutheromania and take a look at that, just to kind of see, how he's progressed from that comic to this comic. And there are also a lot of narrative threads between the two, a lot of thematic threads between the two. Eleutheros means freedom. Etheres. We go
with
Etheres. Okay. Etheres.
Short vowel on the end.
Whew, yeah, there we go. Etheres is also very much so. Both comics actually kind of have to do a lot about the chains people put on themselves. Right. And Eleutheromania was much more, and they're both, I believe, based on poems that Anas wrote as poems first, and then decided, this in the form of a comic would really sell the story within these poems, like what I'm trying to get across, so much better than just, hey, here's a poem,
actually
posting online.
Reading up on him, the poetry is like, it's a cornerstone of his work.
Yes.
And I was watching an interview with him recently, and he has a project upcoming. I think it's with Dennis. And he's trying to pull back on the poetry.
Okay.
So
well, I believe these first two comics, and he has another one that he crowdfunded on Zoop. So I think these three were like, I have poems. Yeah. This is how I'm going to start. And to be fair, this was a really great way. This is, for lack of a better term, a niche. that he carved
Perfect
out.
niche.
Yeah, especially in comics form. You don't see poetry in comics form very often.
And it's integrated seamlessly. Like
Seamlessly,
you
yes.
sort of sneak up on the poetry, or the poetry sneaks up on you.
Yes.
So it's a great read, guys. It is a great read. It is a one-off. It's just kind of this really dense and beautiful world. Yeah, just go get it. Just go get it.
Yeah, it's very evocative. It's very and we're gonna, this is a wine and comics pairing show, so we're gonna talk about how we actually paired wine to this bad
One of
boy.
us chose 3.
One of, well, sort of,
because he hates losing.
Kind of. I know which one is the one that I would choose, but I'm very curious to see Dallas's take on these 3. Because one thing we did differently this time that we have not done in any previous episode is we both read the same comic. We didn't bring our own comics. And the last episode we tasted each other's wines with different comics, but this time we read the same comic, and independently, without discussing with each other, we don't even know what each other picked. We decided what we thought was the best pairing, and today on this episode, we're going to find out what we think of each other's choices. Do we agree? Where do we differ? Right. And one thing, part of the cornerstone of pairing wine with anything, it comes from wine and music pairing, which there have been actual studies of. And in wine and music pairing, there's in the studies, there seemed to be a very universal quality to what people decided went with what. Now, that wasn't to say that like they gave someone a piece of music and said, you can pick anything, and everyone chose the same thing. Yeah. But when given a relatively short selection, everyone kind of agreed what went with what. So there's a certain universality to that. But when it comes to art, a big piece of pairing wine with any sort of art form, any sort of piece of I'm going to call it entertainment, but at the same time, it is also art. Just like wine is art in its way, is that it's about how you connect with it and how you respond to it, what it means to you.
The X factor is your palate.
Right. The X factor is your palate, both in terms of your literal tasting palate, and then also in terms of what
references, experience.
Right. And like, if you like the comic, how do you like which parts of the comic did you like? Was it the art? Was it the poetry? Was it which pieces of the poetry? And we're going to talk a little bit about how Anas wrote this comic too, because it's not all just a straightforward poem with some visuals attached to it. It is better integrated than that between the art. It is truly a comic. So we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But it is, there's going to be a level of personal preference, and how we connected to the comic is then going to determine what we thought paired with it, because you're trying to complement that emotional response to the two things together. And that is the bedrock of what this type of pairing really is.
Or the alternative is you find the deficiencies or deficits in the core piece of art and find notes in the wine that contrast it or complement it or bring out,
bolster it, bolster the deficiencies, like fill in those gaps. But to some degree, like I like to just use the word complement. I know that seems like it has a single definition, but it can complement in many different ways. It can complement by like tit for tat. You're actually matching the property, what you think the properties of the two things are, or contrast, where they're wildly different, but they work together in harmony in some way, shape, or form. All right, but let's talk about the comic first a little bit more than we have. So we're gonna go with
how many times did you read it?
2.5.
Okay, same.
So okay, perfect. So
I will say the first time I read it, it definitely has that sort of wait, what is this quality? The art is just so sort of refined and unique. The palette, the color palette is just
Dennis's art is very like fine fine artwork. I mean, it's almost like I'm not great with art styles or like what material, and I'm pretty sure this was all digitally done, but the look of it is very almost like some kind of like somewhere between like oil on canvas and watercolors. It's somewhere in between
brush
those
quality,
two things.
You're
right. So it looks very much like fine art. And then you have Anas. So when I read it the first time, and I did not know what I was walking into. So I'd been friendly with Anas online on social media. And when he sent me a digital copy of this to take a look at, It was like, I didn't know his background. I didn't know he was predominantly a poet up to this point, really. And so I didn't know I was about to walk into essentially a poem. And it's more, it's not even just like a tone poem or anything like that, though there's elements of that in there. There's a narrative here. It is abstract in its way and yet very definitive in other ways. Like, he walks this wonderful line.
The abstraction is the world you're in.
Yes.
You're actually not exactly sure where you're placed, but the moments from sort of story beat to story beat are very defined.
Yes.
You see her going from point A to point B. The narrative is furthered by the poem. The poetry itself reiterates that. So the internal sort of moments are very defined and very clear. But the overarching world is just so abstract. Yeah.
Well, and the world, I would say the world represents the themes of the story in the poem. It's very it's almost materializing what this is about. In it's visual. So it's like materializing what the themes are, what the subject matter is in this visual style that is both concrete and completely abstract at the same, and which is the poetry of it. But it works really well, because if it went too far in either other direction, if it went more abstract, or if he tried to make it more concrete and really just make it like, this is a story with some gorgeous poetic prose, it wouldn't have had the same effect.
It'd be very weak.
It would have. I think then you would have sensed that one side or the other was being half-assed, and in this sense, I think the vision that the both of them had, and that's one of the questions I actually have, and I'm gonna send some questions to Anas to answer on our Substack. So if you want to see a Q&A with him, I'm gonna ask a little bit about the process of this comic, because one thing that fascinated me was obviously the poem came first. I got that from the little bit of research that I did into Anas and some of the interviews that he's done. But he had the poem. Dennis, the artist, read the poem and was like, I really want in on this. This is what I want to do. This is amazing. But there are certain visuals and the way in which the poetry and the visuals work together. I feel like there might have been a little bit of, once Dennis made that image, Anas then was like, I can tweak that a little bit better.
Yeah.
And these can, because it feels so perfectly of a piece. I would have expected, if I knew nothing about this comic, hadn't even read that there were two people involved in it, I would have expected this was a writer artist who was doing it all in his in his vision. So I'm really curious to know how much back and forth they had and how much Anas was like, okay, let me tailor this. And I will say one cool thing, one of the things that made this comic walk that tightrope as well as it did, it isn't just the poem, because there are splash pages where it is the poem. These are the lines from the poem, and it's you can sense the meter, you can sense sometimes there's some rhyming couplets in there, or rhyming, not even just a couplet, but like in the meter, like certain bits and pieces will tie together and sing song with each other in ways where you're like, oh, this is poetry. I'm getting this. But then it will break from the splash pages into more narrative paneled comic pages. And the poetry specifically is dispensed with, and you get more of this freestyle prose that goes on in those pages. But then the next splash page, it goes right back to poetry, like metered poetry, and it flips between those two very well.
There is it's an ethereal quality to the entire work, right?
But
but it does this thing where you sort of feel like you're just floating around in this amorphous world with this character, this primary character, and she doesn't really know where she is to a certain degree. And so the poetry seems sort of like a tool to kind of drop the viewer, the reader, into something more concrete. To sort of flush out these particular panels and story beats. It's fantastic. I just the flow. But Dennis said that once he realized what this was, he fought to do the cover. And the cover is Dennis's as well. Sometimes, so often you get.
It's interesting.
He fought to do the cover after they got further along in this process.
And
I will say it's all of it. is
right.
It's panel worthy, for lack of a better phrase. It's just beautiful. There's so much movement and motion. And I will say, Dennis's use of lighting is, I mean, I've kind of, it took my breath away in two panels, like
right.
2 pages.
It's both dreamlike and cinematic, but it's not cinematic in that, very straightforward Spielbergian way or anything like that. It's cinematic in that way. Like if someone was trying to be dreamlike, Lynchian, whatever kind of term you want to use, like this gives it that ethereal quality, and it is really good. And I did, even just looking at it, like here's a great example of how it goes from poetry to more prose-esque. So on the very first splash page of this comic, it ends like the final 2 little caption boxes: a flicker of glow down a woven road with voices that bellow. A name I hear, familiar to me, Valerie, it's time to leave. Then it goes into a 3-paneled page where it says, the stench of decay engulfs my senses, dense and heavy, weighing down every step on this ashen path I walk upon. Alarms ringing in my head, breathing danger and confusion on this land I know not of. So it's still really well crafted, but the meter of the whole thing kind of goes away. The rhyming sing-songiness goes away, but then it becomes something much more almost like Cormac McCarthy, like very minimalist prose, where it's like it's very direct, right? Very direct, very efficient, as minimal as it can be, while getting the points across, getting the whole feel and tone across. And then it gets more flowery when you go back to that actual poetry on those splash pages, and it just goes back and forth. And this is basically this character's journey of self-discovery in a sense. This has been, from Anas's own words, this whole comic, this whole story, this poem, was largely about, if there was no heaven or hell, if there was no truly biblical version of an afterlife, like where do people go afterwards, and what would that be? Why would we be there? And what do we do with it? So there's that element of self-discovery. There's that element of freeing yourself from your own, in a little bit, the classical concept of limbo, where it's like you're relieving yourself of your own, you're stuck in your own feelings of guilt, sense or our concept of sin and what we've done or haven't done or didn't do in life, and how we need to come to terms to that. And this is just a one-shot, 31-page comic. And what's amazing is it's enough.
I don't actually need to see
100%,
anymore.
100%.
It is so satisfying. The journey is so satisfying. The art alone, I couldn't even imagine him trying to go back to this and replicate this art for a proper.
I agree. So I said I read it 2.5 times. So the first time I read it, I didn't know what I was walking into. Which was a good thing, but it was also like, even as I was reading it, I knew, like, I was halfway through the comic and I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this again. Like, I know I'm not taking it all in because I'm trying to read this like a comic, especially as a one shot. I'm like, oh, it's going to be breezy, not breezy, in a good way, not breezy, but it was something where I'm like, I'm going to need to study this a little bit harder. And I will admit, I got done with it the first time. I had zero idea what to pair it with. I mean, like, totally zero. Agreed. I was like, I'm at a complete loss. I need to come back. And I wanted to sleep on it too. I didn't just reread it.
And then he chose 3. There. Just remember that, guys.
I did choose 3. No, they're 3 kind of sort of exactly the same. Very, very slight variations on a theme. But the second time I read it, I knew instantly when I was finished what I was going to pair it with. Instantly.
I knew the class of wine.
Yes, that's what that's what I mean. I knew exactly where I was going, and I'm like, I need to fine tune it a bit better than that. But why I read it the half a time after that was the second half of the comic, and mostly the ending. It is not it is not inexplicable or super obscure, but I still have a question mark as to what the ending exactly denoted, what exactly happened there. So spoiler alert, skip ahead maybe 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this, because I'm going to say this out loud. Not that this is such a narrative style of work that the spoiler really makes a difference to the journey and your experience of it. But I couldn't 100% tell. Was she taking someone else's place or her own place? Right. And that was that's a bit of, I'm still not sure.
Right.
And but I read it one more time to see if I could make, like, if I read it really carefully, will it be obvious? No, it was not. No. It was not. So it was meant to be a little.
And it's by design, because that furthers the idea of it being this sort of unresolved, ethereal concept, right?
I suspect she was taking her, it was sort of her own pain that she was taking the play. There was one line, and let me see if I can find it actually real quick. There was one line in the comic that really, I think, almost made it definitive to me on,
I know exactly where you're
and I think it was, so there were a couple lines I know this pain when she's taking the place of some other ethereal female-like being that is there, that looks a little bit like, and like she's got the same kind of, it's a little bit of a white versus dark, version of the same character. And the text states, I know this pain, I carried it with me for a lifetime and then some. And it does say a reflection, foreign to me but familiar in many ways. So this could still be someone else, but then these are you're a mutual spirit, like soul sisters in that way, in that sense of like, we're here for the same reason, like we've been trapped, and maybe I need to take your place here on this. But then it does say, I've held on for long enough, they've held on for long enough, they can let go now, I'm here to take their place, my place. So you know what?
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I think that's the point. That's
right.
The design. That's
you're not.
That's
so,
the punctuation.
And it's interesting. So one other comic I've done on this show is Step by Bloody Step by Image Comics, and this is the completely wordless one that I did not too long ago by Cy Spurrier and Eddie Berganza, if I'm remembering the artist's name correctly. This was a wordless comic about another female character's journey through an actual fan. Like, it definitely was not an abstract world whatsoever, but the journey ends in a very similar way. And that might also be kind of messing with it's so thematically similar in how that, so Anas, go check out Step by Bloody Step if you haven't. I think you'd really, really enjoy that comic. The trade paperback is out at this point. So let's talk about what we actually paired this guy with. Okay,
Mr. 3.
So for me, on the second reading, it's poetry on the page. I was like, what kind of wine is poetry to me in the glass?
Oh, I know.
Right. But also it had to be something that, this is a work that is, it's very approachable for poetry. It's very approachable. I mean, I think him turning it into a comic was wise. But at the same time, it is complex, it is multi-layered, it fools you into thinking it's simple. in sort of like, here's a 30-page comic. No, like, just come on, you can read this in 10 minutes, go for it. And it's like, you can, but what you're wading into is so much more. So I went with Pinot Noir. I
was going to say Pinotage.
Pinotage.
I thought you were going to go Pinotage.
See, Pinotage is a little too... and we're going to talk about Pinotage in an upcoming episode one of these days. It's a native to South African wine, and it's a hybrid that they invented down there, and even South Africa still calls it a work in progress, because it can be delicious, it can be disgusting, and it really, I mean, they're still trying to figure out exactly what to do with it, but it is a unique grape. But Pinot Noir I went with. Because it is something, you have both very classical, very traditional Pinot Noir out there. You're basically talking about your Burgundies of the world, because that is the red grape. Every Burgundy / or if you want to call it proper name, Bourgogne, that is where all they grow is Pinot Noir in terms of red down there. And they've been doing it for hundreds of years at least. I actually don't know when it began. And then the New World Pinot Noir. I mean, you've got Pinots coming. I mean, California Pinots can be absolutely tremendous. You also have Washington and Oregon Pinot Noirs, which are also, and there's a range. Like, there's so much happening in the glass. It's rare to find a simple Pinot Noir. You almost can't. I don't think. It's rare. And when you do, those are usually the disgusting Pinot Noirs, because they're just so simple. They're so one note, and that almost is weird, because Pinot is it's usually a lot of people have a hard time getting into Pinot because it's not a simple. It's light bodied, it's light in color usually, but then with these crazy flavors that are all, I mean, just layered and all over the place. It's not a straightforward, simple flavor. So for me, I went to Sonoma for my Pinot, and I tried a couple in different areas of Sonoma, because Sonoma is a big area.
Big place.
So I tried both, and I'm actually going to, so Dallas has 3 glasses down here, and they're all numbered.
Is it 1, 2, or 3? When am I starting? 1?
Yeah, you're going to start with number 1. He's going to taste all 3 and let me know what he thinks pairs best with this one. I do know which one I think pairs best with it, but these are 3 distinct Pinot Noirs from different parts of Sonoma that they come out demonstrably different.
That is fumey.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm telling you, they're complex. Like Pinot is something, it takes some time to appreciate everything that it is. A lot of people see, because it usually has a weaker color and a weaker body, and people are like, oh, I want a Cabernet. Like if I'm drinking red wine, I want wine. But like Pinot is it's so much more complex, I think, than most Cabernet Sauvignons even can be. Okay. All
right.
Yeah. That's number 1. You're gonna taste all 3 or no?
I will.
Okay. So these Pinots. So I will say that
I won't. The age on these guys.
These are all 20. Let's see. There's a 2018, a 2019, 2 2018s, 2 2019. I'm sorry, 2 2018s, 1 2019. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Now he's going to move on to number 2. This one should be fairly different, fairly distinct from the first one.
Oh yeah, the nose is
completely different.
Gee.
So that's why I opened a couple, because I was like, you know what? I can't just say Pinot and like just pick any bottle of Pinot and crack it open and we're good to go. I was like, no, I got to find the right Pinot, because that's not easy. And even within just Sonoma, there's a huge range. Sonoma, I mean, it goes pretty far inland, but also runs way down, up and down the coast. You've got mountains. I will say one of these is from the Sonoma Mountains, and one of these and 2 of these are predominantly Russian River Valley.
Is this mine?
Yes, that is yours. All right, so Dallas has got to try one more. Number 3.
Okay, it's definitely out of 2 and 3.
Now remember, not your favorite. What pairs best?
Oh yeah. So 2. Is extraordinarily quaffable.
Yes. Yes.
As one might say, like, wow.
Yeah, crazy quaffable. That is one of the easiest drinking Pinots. And that, so number 2 is the pure Russian River Valley fruit. And it is Russian River Valley, or at least the section
I love Russian River.
It's much more further inland. It's warmer.
It is.
The fruit gets much riper, and this is something, it's dark, so you're going to get a lot more like blacker fruits. You're going to get like black cherry. You're going to get the
cherry's right on top,
almost more blackberry than raspberry, even though Pinot is this lighter bodied thing. It's
I would say mulberry.
Mulberry's great.
Mulberry.
And then things like the tertiary flavors will be little hints of like dark chocolate and cocoa, and like what do they call under, like maybe a little bit of what the French call like what is that, garrigue, right? The little like underbush type of forest flory kind of a thing. But very subtle. Like it's mostly the fruit on this one because of the ripeness of the Russian River Valley.
I think with this comic, I want something that enhances the experience of the comic rather than rather than hold on, guys.
I think he might be going in my direction. Yeah.
And I will say, cut that. God damn it. These two are so close. But 3 has a little, I want to say age, but there's a little maturity to complexity. It seems like it's
not as perfectly quaffable. There's more going on.
That's it.
Okay.
So, just like this comic, I needed to sit with it. And I enjoyed sitting with it. The more I sat with it, the more I enjoyed it.
Yes.
That's not always the case with quaffable wines.
Yes, I do agree with that.
So I'm going to go with
number 3.
3.
Okay. So let me talk about number 3 real quick. So
go with 1 and 2 first. What's 1 and 2?
Oh, 1 and 2. Start with well, let's start with number 2. That was one you first started. So this is the one. This is a pure Russian River Valley. This is by Tiny House Vineyard. It is a very small winery. They have a very small production. Usually you have to be a member to get a bottle, or like visit the tasting room and buy directly. Like you're not going to find
brag.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I bought it online. But it was, so you can buy it directly from them online. Don't get me wrong. You just aren't going to find this in a grocery store. They just don't make enough. But this was a 100% Russian River Valley. So I was like, okay, I tried this. And as Dallas said, too quaffable, too easygoing. And that did not, I didn't need, like the easygoingness just wasn't, it didn't enhance the experience of this particular comic. It was at odds with it, and not in a way that enhanced or bolstered it or I wasn't looking to fill in flaws on this comic. I was, so in the end, I was like, I feel like I need to be watching cartoons when I drink this thing. You know what I mean? Like something super easy, and I'm just getting a little tipsy.
That's a good time wine.
On the good stuff, right? So that's a pure Russian River Valley. I'm gonna go to number 3 next, which is Greg GLF, Greg La Follette. He is a well-known winemaker. He is known as the Pinot Whisperer.
He is.
Because he can make amazing Pinot out of just about anything and knows exactly where best to grow it. He has founded a couple of really famous wineries, La Crema, which is one you'll see that which he's no longer a part of, but he founded it.
I think we mentioned.
I think we have as well. It's now owned by, and it makes a lot of wine. You can find La Crema in grocery stores and things like that. So if you look for it, it is a very still well respected, even though they've expanded their production and whatnot. And he found a winery called Flowers, which is very, very pricey. Most of his stuff is usually, like, if you find a Pinot by him, it's like in the $70 to $80 a bottle range. GLF was his attempt at making something that matched the kind of quality he would stand by, but was more affordable. So these usually run more like the $30 to $35 a bottle range, which for him is it's like half the price of anything else he touches.
But totally worth it.
Yes.
If you're watching.
This is amazing. Now, this is also predominantly Russian River Valley, which is interesting, but it is mixed with other lots. And it also, I believe, one of the core Pinot Noir clones.
And that's 2.
Is no, number 3.
This is 3.
This is 3. This is the one you chose.
Yeah.
And I don't entirely disagree with you on this one. This would be my second choice.
Yeah.
This was my runner-up.
If you say 1 was the one you chose.
It is, but we're going to get there.
Here it goes.
So this is, I think, of the 3, the best one in terms of which was my favorite. It's this one. So in a sense, I don't disagree with you there either. Like, this was the most balanced while having complexity, while having some notes that were more challenging to get into, but not in a way. I mean, like, it's still delicious. It smells amazing. It is made by, for those of you who aren't that into wine, Pinot Noir, there are a huge number of clones that are planted, but only a few are really planted widely. And this one is made with a fairly rare clone. So even though it was Russian River Valley, it was made, a big chunk of it was made by a fairly rare clone in Russian River Valley, which probably makes it nice and distinct from the other Russian River one that we had. Plus, it mixed, he peppered in lots from other areas to kind of make this holistic experience. And it really is. This is by far the most complete wine of the 3. That said, number 1.
What's this guy?
This is from Sonoma Mountain in Vanderkamp.
How do I know that?
Vineyard. It's a very famous vineyard. A lot of, in fact, Greg La Follette, his 2018 was entirely from Kamp. But he didn't do that for the 2019. And he's made plenty of Pinots from the Kamp. So Sonoma Mountain, it faces away from the coast. It's going to be above, it's on the mountain. It's got nice elevation above the fog line, but it's going to be much cooler most of the time with just a little bit of heat. So it's going to be very slow ripening, but not get as ripe as anything in Russian River Valley, probably even then. The grapes are going to struggle a lot more to grow there, which usually makes a better wine. But it is also, for a Pinot, the reason I chose this, when reading this comic while drinking this is a challenging Pinot, more so than the other two. It has, there is a, so this one, if I would say rhubarb is the primary note on number one in terms of taste. Like I would call this rhubarb pie, not strawberry rhubarb, just rhubarb pie is what I get from it.
There's the sour,
sour bitterness to it that underscores there's some sweetness, but it's very toned down. I would give this is a very, the Russian River ones are very black fruit driven, black cherry, mulberry, blackish berry. Whereas this is rhubarb, raspberry, a hint of strawberry, but it doesn't have that simple sweetness of a strawberry either. Like every bit of
Kamp, you said, right?
Kamp. Yeah. Kamp for those listening. This one, it has an astringency. It's got a but it's not an astringency that
it's not unpleasant.
It's not unpleasant.
It forces the salivary reaction, which is part of that sort of satisfaction in the mouth.
But this is like when I'm reading this comic, I am working hard. I'm working hard on the poetry, working hard on all the visuals and the text, matching that. Like, what is this journey? Where are we going? What's happening? And drinking something that also forces me to think a lot while I sip it. That worked for me.
That does force you to slow down a bit.
It does.
Actually, good. I like that.
And it had that, I believe its elements. It's the elements that are challenging plus the elements that are very refined and because this is a well-made Pinot Noir. Don't get us wrong. It's just not as, oh shit, that's Kool-Aid. Let's drink.
Right.
And even though the Greg La Follette has more complexity to it and things that makes you think, this one was the one that it was yet more. I tried the La Follette. I really just had the other two open at first. Okay. And I was like, oh, this one over the Russian River for sure, over the number two. But then I tried the GLF just to give it a shot. And I'm like, it's close. It's close to number one for me. So I think either of those would work really well. If you find a Pinot that is that well structured as the GLF, that's going to pair with this just fine. But for me, that little bit of extra challenge to the palate is what I wanted.
It's good.
Even more.
I like that.
Even more.
I like that approach.
All right, what you got?
All right, where's your glass?
Right here. Pour. Pre-pour.
All right.
I want my money's worth. Wow. Okay, you gave me my money's worth. That's like a real glass.
Hey.
No, like an actual like.
Oh yeah.
If I went and paid $15 at a bar, this is exactly what they poured me.
We got to drink the bottle.
Nice. Woo.
All right. Dig in.
Okay. Wow. What that smell? Holy shit.
Yeah. Right.
All right. This is fruity, friends. This is wow. This is mixed berry pie on the nose, but also very herbaceous on top of it. This is like a rosemary mixed berry tart with like something like lots of other things baked in, and it's
someone's
all
in the kitchen cooking. Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah,
I mean, this even has a little bit of like yeastiness on the nose.
That's right.
A little bit of like which is probably why I'm going to pastry, because you got that fresh baked something going on. Excuse me. Yeah. That's smooth. That is shockingly smooth. I thought that would be more powerful. Ding. Yeah. It smells really powerful, and then just goes down Goes down like closer to water. But it's nice. It has a lot of flavors going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
You do get, you definitely get the fruit that we just mentioned, like a mixed berry tart.
Oh, that's so good.
You get a little bit of yeastiness. It's got some good acidity, definitely some tannins, but I thought the tannins would be stronger.
Yeah.
They start to hit and then they just like fade out. And I was like, ooh, nice.
They finished very fine.
Very fine, very fine. This is, what is this? All right.
What you thinking? Free association.
It smells, to me, it smells like a Bordeaux.
Okay. All right.
Like a youngish Bordeaux.
Okay.
Bordeaux. Not too young, but not too old yet either.
All right.
And that would be, but I'm thinking, especially with the color,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if it is something that would even be close to something, like I want to say it might, it's not green enough to be a Cabernet Franc.
Correct.
Syrah-ish?
Okay.
I think I'm going towards Syrah-y.
Did you see the bottle when I walked in?
No.
Yeah,
Is it Syrah?
It's a Petite Sirah.
Petite Sirah. Well, see, that's not a Syrah. Though.
I know.
It's not a Syrah.
It is a Petite Sirah with an old world grape.
Okay.
Old world backbone. It's a Napa 2014.
Okay.
The vineyard is retro Cellars.
Oh, nice.
Elevation.
Okay, yeah.
Howell Mountain, Napa Valley.
Yes.
2014.
Okay.
Petite Sirah.
2014. That is enough
That's
age
exactly.
to make it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because let me tell you, I have 2 more bottles of a 2014. I bought 3 bottles of a 2014 Petite Sirah from is Napa as well. And it's one of the few, because I've had some younger Napa Petite Sirahs.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah,
that's tough. That's rough.
Put those on the shelf.
I love Petite Sirah is my favorite grape of all time. I'll go ahead and say and throw that gauntlet down. But I'm telling you, you need a little time.
Need a little age on that.
Yeah. Or you just have to love it like I do so much. You'll drink it young and just like
and eat it with a steak.
Yeah, you just keep coughing and sipping water between every sip, and you're like, don't care. Hasn't lost any of that youngish. You know, you're like, oh, you're gonna punch me in the fucking mouth, okay? But then it doesn't.
And that mirrors.
All right, I see that.
Mirrors the experience of reading this comic. You think the world is going to be far less abstract than it actually is.
Yes.
You think they're going to be these massive sort of peaks and valleys, when in reality it's just kind of this tone poem.
Yes.
In a weird way.
Yes.
And the reason I chose it is because it has a bottom that is so sort of weighty with the
it's still there.
It's still there. It's still there.
The power is still there, but it's not aggressive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so you can sit and drink this while you read this guy, and it doesn't subtract from the experience. Right. I wanted something. You said a very interesting phrase. You said it sort of goes down a bit like water.
Yes. Which
is also what the comic does. It's so seamlessly and flawlessly consumable, and it's just, it doesn't get in your way, it doesn't slap you in your face.
I'm with you there. You there.
You know, it doesn't require a whole lot other than you sit with it.
You know what, I would have a takeaway. I would have a takeaway here between our 2 pairings, because this is where I think my brain has gone anyway. I'm not going to say that one is particularly better than the other per se, but this is what I will say. If you're a younger wine, Pinot. And find a Pinot from an area that is cooler climate, that is not going to get too ripe, because you need that astringency from the colder climate.
There's some great Mendocino Pinots out there.
Mendocino is a great one, because you're going to need that acidity, that liveliness, a little bit more of a challenge on the palate. You don't want something that's too quaffable, that's too easy. But if you can do an aged wine, you know, an aged Pinot often is too smooth at that point. But an aged Petite Sirah, I'm gonna go with that. I think that's how you should go.
That's a first read, second read. This is the final read.
Right. Or
that's the curation.
If you happen to be sitting on a 2014 or older Petite Sirah already, do that. It's going to be more special because it's a nice aged bottle, and this will be a great excuse to pop it open. But if you need to go out and buy a bottle of wine right this moment to read with this comic,
agreed.
A nice Mendocino County Pinot. I would say I would say not Russian River. Don't, because normally, especially a grocery store one that you're going to find, those are going to be the riper. Those are going to be the easier buys. I'm going to say go for Sonoma Mountain. If you can find something that says Vanderkamp on it, and that is literally, there actually are a surprising amount. It is a big vineyard. They do supply a lot of fruit to a lot of different wineries, but it is spelled exactly as it sounds. It is just, VAN space DER, Vander, and then KAMP. Look for that. Sonoma Mountain is also an AVA that probably, it's big. You can't entirely depend on that. Sonoma Coast, you absolutely cannot depend on because it's huge. It's enormous, and it actually goes way inland and sticks. It doesn't just stick to the coast. So you have to be careful about that one. American AVAs, which is how we break things down, they're a little political and not the best. They're not as good as old world European ones, where it's like there are rules in place so that all the wine, exactly what you're getting based on where it's from. Here, it can say the same thing and be night and day. I mean, we had two Russian rivers essentially, and they weren't one of them wasn't 100% Russian river, but they were still based on where they exactly got their grapes and how they made the wine. They were very distinct from each other's. But Petite Sirah, my all-time favorite grape. We will talk more about this in a future episode, guaranteed, because it is my favorite grape.
Retro Cellars, the Dunn family, fantastic. Really, they make, seriously. I have like 5 or 6 of their things at home right now. And
amazing,
fantastic.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
All right, and we will have a link to the Substack down below with an interview from Anas that will have some a bit of a Q&A that we will do. So if you want to know a little bit more about this comic, and once again, it comes out March 22nd, comic stores everywhere.
Order, go find it, support these guys.
Can't pre-order anymore, but
that's true.
Yeah, that's true.
It's March.
It's like 12 days away, but so you can't
go buy it.
Right. But you can go to your comic shop and be like, if you've already ordered it, please hold me a copy, or just make sure you're going to your comic shop on March 22nd and you grab that bad boy.
And if you buy it and manage to get not Pinotage, what'd you get again?
Pinot Noir.
Or a, what the hell is that? Petite Sirah.
Wow. I gave him 3, to be fair.
Match them up, see what you think. Call us dumbasses or assholes in the comment section on the Substack. Yes. And we will gladly read it and mock you.
And if you don't drink wine, you drink something else. Let us know what you
pair it with something else.
Read this and let us know what kind of whiskey, what kind of scotch, what kind of flavored vodka. We don't care.
This has been the Comics and Wine, or Wine and Comics pairing show.
Ciao. Actually, keep recording. What the hell? I always love our outtakes.
I know one day when I run for governor, you're gonna release them. And I'm like, I don't know this guy.
I put them at the end of every video.
God.
Some of them. You don't watch it. You gotta watch them. Go to the end.
I hate watching myself.
And especially at the very beginning. Sometimes I'll put them at the very beginning. If the theme song is playing and you haven't seen any outtakes, that means there aren't any at the beginning. But when you go to the end, I do that thing on videos where they, Which one was that? Number 1?
Mix all 3.
Oh, and they're amazing, huh?
I'm not kidding you.
Okay, let me finish this and I will put them all in.
The hell?
I mean, the GLF to begin with is a blend, so that makes sense. Like, Pinots tend to be better this way.
What is that? Oh my God.
They do
that's fantastic.
Yeah, they do, because the extra astringency of this one and then the extra non-astringency of the others. I do think the best Pinot, I mean, and most Pinots out there, even when they're all coming from the same region, like when you look at the breakdown, they're always like, and from that region, we took clones X, Y, Z, and ZZ from different blocks on the same vineyard. And I'm like, that's all different. And they're blending them to find the best thing. Like Pinot, you rarely find, here's one clone of Pinot from one vineyard in one location. And I think there's a reason for that.
That's very true.
Yeah. So as much as I love tasting single vineyard things, or because it just gives you that like, oh, that's what that's like. That's interesting. Is it the best? No. The blend will always be better.
It just rounds it
you know,
out.
yes. Oh, but with the videos, yeah, when you get to the end, I'll do that thing where you see the little, you know, that little boop, like with the bars on the TV thing, and it's a boop, and here's another little out scene, outtake, and then
yeah, I love this comic, like so much so. Like it would be one of those things where I reached out to the creator and said, I know this is just a one-off, but we got to try and sell this somewhere.
Oh man, it is though. That's the point. It's coming out on March 22nd.
No, I mean like an adaptation of something.
Oh, I
like,
see.
Yeah.
What would you adapt it to?
You know, that's my brain. I'm always like, we got 6 months.
I'm like, son,
let's adapt.
This is not an adaptable, really.
It
I mean, as a short animation, yes.
Yeah.
But it would have to be something like that.
I mean, it kind of works. You know, there's this weird, not weird, accessible kind of Orpheus descending strand to it, but it's female centric.
Right.
Which I don't think we've actually seen before.
No. And although she's not there to rescue someone else. So there is that.
Or is she? Or is that just half the mission, right?
Right.
And the art. Like, okay, do not leave that in. All right, I forgot the camera was on. I'm already drunk. Let me stop.
Oh, hell no.
You're sitting here recording and you're like, oh, I'm using all this.
I'm going to tell the creators.
Dallas is entertaining.
I'm going to tell the creators, like, don't watch the whole video. Skip to the end.
Dallas is very entertaining when he's drinking.
This is where we get super real.
Okay, no, I'm going to say that.
Say it.
No.
Say it.
Because you're recording.
Say it.
Absolutely not.
Boop. No longer recording.
No way.
Say it. He's not that drunk, unfortunately.
Good episode, though.
Yeah, it was. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying, creators. I
definitely get ditzy when I'm drinking. He knows this.
I don't know nothing. I never hang out with this guy unless we're recording.
Yeah, right on.
Ooh. This shit's the best shit.
What is?
I'm talking to the viewers. This is when he just goes off on his own.
All right, let me get off camera. Move.